Cruel, inhumane, racist. These are a few of the many adjectives being ascribed to President Trump's decision on DACA this week. But some say another adjective more appropriately describes the deferred action for childhood arrivals, and that is unconstitutional. The status of millions of so-called dreamers in the United States has become an emotionally ambiguous topic, but the legality of it may be a little more black and white. One America's Claire Hardwick looks at the constitutionality behind doing and undoing DACA.
President Trump announced the end to the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, an immigration policy established through executive authority by President Obama in June of 2012. Michael McConnell, a law professor at Stanford University and a former federal judge, said that this executive action was unconstitutional and a huge overreach of executive power.
I understand why the DACA recipients are upset and worried, but what's being taken away is something that President Obama did not have any authority to give them to begin with. It's important that we follow the law in this country. Many people are, very concerned about President Trump and the rule of law, and yet it's important. Those of us who want to see President Trump restrained by the rule of law, we have to have it the other way too. That the president simply can't, with the stroke of the pen, stop enforcement of laws passed by Congress.
McConnell said it seems President Trump is following the advice of his lawyers on how to operate within the law and is obeying a court precedent. Because in respect to the Deferred Action for Parents of Americans executive order, the Court of Appeals determined President Obama acted unlawfully. This was affirmed by an equally divided vote from the Supreme Court. And DACA is on the same legal footing. Would this have been undone, do you believe, in the courts?
Well, I think that the president has an independent obligation to make sure that the executive branch is not overstepping its authority and is complying with the law. So I do suspect that the courts would have invalidated this at some point, but that's not a reason for the president to continue doing something that he knows and his lawyers are undoubtedly telling him was not lawful.
Ann Sedke, an immigration attorney, said that DACA was a step in the right direction for the major immigration problems in this country. But there were serious issues with this executive order.
What we believe is that he did it pretty, quickly. It wasn't thought out very well. The idea behind it was to help all of the undocumented children who had arrived into the United States with their parents, but there were a lot of holes in the legislation. As an immigration attorney, I noticed that, so did my colleagues. We were happy that we were helping a lot of undocumented children, but we knew that there were a lot of faults in it.
Sedke said the idea was for DACA recipients to be able to register for work authorization cards, social security numbers, and then to start paying taxes, so the burden didn't fall only on the taxpayer. And the way the application process happened was an undocumented immigrant would fill out a form, a background check was done, and as long as the person didn't have any major criminal activities and were enrolled in a school, that was the criteria. But there was no way to ensure all of these steps happened.
We had no follow-up of how these DACA recipients were registered and if they were in fact paying their taxes. So again, going back to the holes in the legislation and how the Department of Homeland Security would follow through with the program, we didn't hear much about it since the passage in 2012.
Michael Cutler, a former immigration officer, said there was a form of deferred action before President Obama's executive order, and one that allowed for proper vetting.
We used to do it on a case-by-case basis. If it was a medical situation, we would actually interview the doctor. The doctor would then have to supply periodic letters showing where the progress of the patient being treated was, so that we could be humanitarian, maybe even offering employment authorization. Because the kid is in a coma, he's going to be this way for the next 8 months. The family, not many families can support themselves. So we allow that. But to drop a net over a population of hundreds of thousands of illegal aliens is something that's not provided for in the law.
Keller said DACA eliminated proper vetting and screening, which is a crucial part of the process and is crucial for national security.
This endangers public safety and national security. We've seen gang members who were participants in DACA. We don't know if these folks came here as they claim they did or if they're lying. When you run the border, there's no record of entry that's created. And the age cutoff, by the way, is 31 as of 2012. So now we're up to age 36. I'm on the wrong side of the age spectrum. 36 sounds young to me, but that's not a child. 31 is not a child.
Sedke says that she hopes there is some sort of legislation to help those DACA recipients who really are making an earnest effort, but it has to be a more thorough process. And that while immigration law is a very gray area and is emotional, at some point there has to be a line and there has to be compliance with the law.
I do a lot of asylum cases for people from South America, from the Middle East, and you know, it's warranted when it's needed, but however, we cannot give asylum to everybody in the United States. There are country conditions that warrant people to run away and try to come and find refuge in the U.S. But we are no different than any other country. We have population issues. We have laws that have to be obeyed, and we're open arms to all immigrants. We've always been. This is not an anti-immigrant agenda that people seem to think. It's just trying to maintain some kind of order.
Cutler said President Trump's decision to end DACA was not cruel. And instead, what was cruel was misleading recipients of an unconstitutional executive action. And that while America admits roughly 1 million legal immigrants per year, to be pro-immigration law enforcement is not to be anti-immigrant. And at some point, American politicians are going to have to decide their priorities.
This isn't about being mean. Why is it that the emotions never flow in the direction of the 1 in 4 American children now living in poverty? Why don't the emotions flow in the direction of the child with a learning disability who goes to a school that is more focused on providing English as a second language? There's a sympathetic case to be made here as well.
When we return, he says he's the fighter the new working class Republican base is looking for. John Hines sits down with Virginia senatorial candidate Corey Stewart.